one thing pops into my head. It was in my second birth group. And it was still, I was kind of on the line then, but, more pushed towards VBAC, and remember, like, I'm going to go to 42 weeks. And I did. I will say I had a lot of testing with my doctor. And I remember, like, I don't ever remember them saying, like, this is dangerous. But again, they had a large Amish population there too, that are more, I guess, and I hate to say it, but more on the natural side. So they kind of maybe, I don't even want to say push the limits, but I was very thorough, like checked out and, come in whenever. However, I was in the group, and I remember it was a twin mom. She had given birth, and the babies were absolutely fantastic. And she kept saying, her feet were swelling really bad. And everybody's like, well, that's normal. You've had twins, you've had a lot of IV fluids. And I remember I was in the hospital with, after I had my daughter, and laying there, and I'm like, well, she had twins and there is a lot of fluid. What's the harm of getting checked out? And so she went in, she got checked out, and to the OB's office, and the OB is actually no longer practicing medicine. It was an older gentleman, and he had sent her home because this is normal. Again, you had twins. And so on that line, she thought everything was okay. And she came home and she was typing, and she said she felt better in her recliner laying back than when she came up. And some people were like, oh, well, that's normal. You've been carrying twins, and nobody said, and I did not even tell her to go in. Thankfully, her husband ended up just taking her to the ER, and she had PPCM, which could have been missed. I mean, and that's something that in those groups, I wish we would have told her, no, this does not sound normal. And, your doctor, who again is no longer practicing, missed this, but you needed to go in. So we're thankful for her husband, but that was one of the most jarring type of wake up call, I think, after I had my daughter too, with these birth groups. It's just like, she could have died and missed. And she was in the ICU for 2 weeks. And I remember the focus then changed to, oh, can you breastfeed your babies, newborns? No, you're in the ICU. Dying, or excuse me, not dying, but trying to get better. And no, the focus should be on the mom, making sure she is supported, and getting better. And so it was very eye-opening within these groups, and seeing that happen, and how the focus went to, well, can you breastfeed these babies? What? I mean, they're being fed, they're being cared for. Right. Twins. Right. And I will say she did go on to pump. And I think that was one thing she could probably control at the time, because a lot of things were not in her control. And they helped her. And she went in, she's very healthy now. I mean, she was healthy before, but kind of changed her diet afterwards. And, but she did not have any more kids. But it was something that even she admitted afterwards is, if her husband wouldn't have taken her in, with the birth group saying that, oh, this sounds normal. And you kind of take it. I did have a lot of IV fluid. I had C-section, so I'm going to be swollen. It's just something that will always stay in my mind. So that's why I get a little bit more defensive in these groups now, especially because somebody can die. And if we can prevent one, which I'm almost positive we prevented a few bad outcomes, even regardless of a death or injury. And I'll be always thankful for that, for all the members, especially in that VBAC evidence-based group that most of us are in.
Yeah, it breaks my heart every time someone says they're having a miscarriage, or they went to the doctor's office and no heartbeat. But the thing is, in the VBAC group, you are allowed to come on and say, I'm having a loss, or I suffered a loss, or, preterm labor before viability. It's not easy to witness, because yes, it shouldn't be easy to witness, but it's important to have all of the stories. You can't just have the happy outcomes. You can't have the happy endings, because that's not real. You have to validate everybody where they are. You cannot sit there and insist that their story doesn't matter. or isn't as relevant to the group.
I think that is something that was actually brought up even just recently when we put the trigger warning video out. Was a lot of people started sharing and sharing pictures and sharing about their experience, their trauma, their loss, and saying like where they're not allowed to share them. They weren't allowed to share pictures of their babies. Like some of the pictures that were shared, I thought they looked like you can't tell the baby's not alive. Like it looked like a beautiful baby in their parents' arms. Like there's a lot of stuff like this is what has been going on. There's kind of like a censorship of trauma and loss, and it's unfortunate because those people need support, maybe even more so than the ones that had a great experience and your baby's alive and you're well and everyone's well. They need more support because they need somebody like understanding them, listening to them, maybe connecting with other people that have experienced trauma or loss, and then being told it's okay what you're feeling, being told that your feelings are valid, being told that all this stuff it's real and it's okay for you to get help. Like there's so many elements to sharing this kind of stuff because they might not share it with anyone else. They might not want to share it with their family because their family's grieving too. And it's very hard with, everybody has to deal with their grief and their trauma in a different way. And sometimes it's better from an outside source. So going to people that, you might not know, but then you're going to know them very well after you start sharing stuff like that, and they're going to know you very well, but it's helpful because there's other people that have been through things. And I can tell you when we lost Gavin, you just have this sense of like, we're the only people in the whole world that's ever lost a child. Like I don't know why, but there's something where you just think, this only happened to us, and we happen to be one in a trillion that this happened to, and nobody ever loses a baby. And because you really just don't hear about it that often, and so, or at least you think you don't. And then when you are aware of it, like we became aware of it, just in the hospital, almost every nurse that we had that took care of us in that little time that they would switch off, day shift, night shift, evening, everybody's switching. Almost every single nurse that we had while we were there had lost a baby. They had either had a miscarriage, one lost, I think, a twin with birth. Like they had all sat on the bed with us, cried with us, shared their experience, listened to us. And it was very eye-opening because we were in the middle of shock. We had all this stuff going on. And when we left, we were like, maybe we're not alone. And then when we went home and we're going through all this months of whatever, and they also told us there is lost groups. Be aware that you can find them. They're online. They're in your area. You can look around. They do exist. There's other people like you. And when we were ready, we started looking out and trying to find them. And it was just such a different world to share your experience with somebody that lost a child, and you can connect on a level that nobody understands. But we would have never found them if somebody didn't say, they're out there and they exist. And then I can't tell you how often over all these years of all the different groups and all the different places that I've been like, hey, I'm a lost mom. I've lost my kid. Don't even have to share how, don't even have to share anything. And I get messages from people or comments and stuff saying like, I lost a baby too. And it's amazing of some women, which I kind of feel, and I hate this. I'm going to just throw this out there, because this actually came up with the trigger warnings and all this stuff because I was getting a bunch of messages. And one of them was women that have a miscarriage feel like their losses don't compare to like my loss. And I hate that because you still lost a baby. I don't care how soon you were, how different our baby's weeks were, you still lost a baby, and you have the right to grieve your child, and you have the right to get help, and and you have the right to share your story. And that is something like I cannot express anymore of like when it comes to like miscarriages and all this stuff. Like you are still grieving, you still had a loss, and you don't have to compare to me and be like, oh, yours was way worse. Like, no, we don't compare each other because there's nothing to compare. We've all experienced in this. And even people from the outside have looked and been like, oh, I don't know. But there's so many different ways of what losses affect us, because somebody else that you even know personally has a loss, it affects you differently than what they're going through, but you still get affected by it, or, you know, most of us do anyways. But it's just something that I've noticed with the groups of like, if you find each other, you seem to be able to open up. And there is a lot of people, I'm one of them, I'm included. There's a lot of us that are undiagnosed, like with issues going on, maybe depression, anxiety, PTSD. And if we're not out there sharing and being aware of all the things going on, you're not getting any help or getting any treatment. And that is something like I deal with it all the time of my own personal stuff going on at home. And it's like me being aware means that I can share that there's like that awareness with other people, because I would have never known. I was like, oh, of course I'm depressed. Of course I have an anxiety problem. You know, like I lost a kid. Like in my mind, it was like acceptable to be okay. And that's how a lot of people viewed me. When I would go to a primary care doctor, I would go to an OB, they would be like, of course you're feeling this way. Of course you're not sleeping well because you lost a baby. And I was like, okay, this is normal. And then years have gone on. And then I had a doctor that was like, this is not normal. Just in case you're wondering, this is not normal. You should be getting better sleep than this. And we should be working on your health. You're not eating properly. Like you're not taking care of yourself. And in the long run, this is not good. It's okay for so long, but it's not okay. So, I mean, really, it just depends. And it's, thankfully, I'm very open and honest about it, but I easily could have grabbed that little checklist and be like, yeah, I sleep fine. Yeah, I eat fine. Yeah, everything's good. And I notice a lot of people online too will do the same thing. They'll kind of almost lie about it or be like, let's not talk about it, because they don't want to be ashamed. They don't want to be like, oh, I don't want someone to think like I don't love my kid that I have alive now, or, you know, they don't want to deal with postpartum depression. They don't want to deal with it because they're scared. And I get it. It's kind of scary, but now I'm kind of like, oh, nobody cares. It's whatever. You know, so it's just one of those, like, there's something about kind of sharing with other people where you can find each other and say, get help, get whatever help you need, like anything, just get it. Like it's worth it. You're worth it, you know?
And I think that's something to be said for the online community. I know that, you know, we've been talking about a lot of the negatives with certain groups, but online community as a whole is a great support system for a lot of parents, especially like you were saying, Danielle, in losses. And even when you just speak up and other people are reading it and be like, hey, they'll reach out because you've experienced the same thing that they have. And I think that's one of the focuses in the VBAC group is just, you know, kind of that, not even safety point for people, but just for them to feel safe, I guess. So yes, that safety point, but for them to feel safe to speak up and, you know, and just harbor like some connections to other people, or just even feel safe to speak about their story because they've been told not to speak about it in other groups, or, you know, told that they were at fault, which also plays into, you know, even their mental health as well. So, you know, and that's something that we try to do in the VBAC group and recognize and help. And we've seen a lot of people reaching out to other people to help. And I mean, I'm just proud of that aspect too of the group, that people feel safe enough to speak out and, you know, say their baby's names instead of just saying, I had a loss. And we'll ask what was their name if they, you know, if they were born and have had a name, or you've given them a name or anything like that, or even just a miscarriage. How are you feeling? You know, even if it's an early miscarriage, how are you feeling? And just letting them speak. And I think that's the biggest thing, just the community of it all, and the focus on the birthing person too, and not just, okay, well, you've had a baby or you've had a loss. We want to know about you. We want to know about your baby as well.